All right, the proper way how to tighten a dirt bike chain. Obviously, this is a street bike tire, but it's still a WR450, so that's a dirt bike. So let's get to it. You just break this loose. It's a 27 millimeter nut on this, but I'm still rearranging the garage, so I got my metric adjustable wrench here. So break that loose. Break this nut loose here on both sides to be able to adjust it. And then I can tell that's just a little bit loose. I like to I like to get 2 fingers in about there. I don't know, I kind of just eyeball it. That just looks a little bit too loose to me, and you can tell it's hitting the tire there, so I just want to tighten it up a little bit. So this was a 12 millimeter for most Yamaha's Japanese bikes, and then this adjuster bolt is a 10 millimeter, and you turn it out to adjust it. I'm just doing it quarter turn at a time. All right, so now I'm looking at these lines here. I got 1, 2, 3, that 3 lines up in the middle of this line on the swing arm. So this is the adjuster block. So you want to line these up the same on both sides so that the chain and the wheel are straight. So we'll go over here. This one got off kilter a little bit. I'm guessing it'll end up there. Got a little bit too tight. Yeah, that's too tight. So that one was on 4, line 4. So we'll turn this back in, knock the tire in. Okay, so that's back to being loose again. So let's try 3.5. There's 3.5 on this side. And that's close, so go a little bit more. 1, 2. That's pretty close. 1, oop, wrong way. 1, 2. Okay, that's pretty close there. So it's about 3.25 there. 3.25 there. So that looks pretty good to me. Like I said, you can check your manual for the technical proper adjustment of it. But as long, the biggest thing is you want it tight enough, but when the suspension compresses, that's going to tighten it up even more. So you can get on the bike like this, compress the suspension, and as long as there's a little bit of a wiggle room there, it's not too tight. That's mainly what you're looking for, and every bike is a little bit different. So you're just getting to that compression point of the bike where the chain aligns where it's going to be as tight as possible, and as long as there's a little bit of wiggle room, it's not too tight and you're good to go. So let's get these nuts tightened up again. You might have to hold this bolt, adjuster bolt, to tighten it up. You don't need it super tight, because if you get it super tight this time, it may be really hard to get off next time, and you will round it off, and I see that all the time. So just barely get it snug. That's not what's mainly holding the wheel. So just barely get that snug. You don't need to torque it super tight. And if these are corroded, use some penetrating oil on them before you try taking it off. And if they are really stuck and you get it rounded, which I have done before, you just want to use a locking pliers and clamp it on as hard as you can on here. to break it loose, and then you'll just have to replace this nut here. So we got those nuts tight, and now it's just to tighten this back up. And this one you want to get pretty blasted tight, because if this falls off, well, then your axle's gonna fall off, and that won't be too pretty. So get this nice and tight. There. And that, ooh, that's actually tighter. Yeah, so I'm actually gonna loosen that up a little bit. Sometimes it gets tighter when you lock down that axle nut. So I'm gonna loosen it back up and back it off just a little bit. Let's go 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's at 3.5 there. So I'll lock these back up. So if your adjuster blocks aren't accurate, or for some reason you can't read them very well, and you don't have any special tools to check the straightness or alignment of the chain and wheel, you can kind of look at it like you're looking down a gun sight, so you can just check for the straightness of it. I mean, it should look perfectly straight. If it's not, then you'll need to adjust one side to get it perfectly perpendicular with the axle, because if the wheel and the sprockets aren't lined up, the chain's going to make a lot of noise, and it's going to put a lot more wear on the sprockets and the chain. All right, and that looks pretty good. Maybe a smidge tight, but let's compress it here and make sure there's a little bit of wiggle room. Yep. All right, and that is how you easily tighten a typical dirt bike chain. This is pretty standard in all motocross or enduro bikes. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment, and hope this helped. This is Kelly from Motocross Hideout. Learn more, ride more.